You know what you're doing, don't you? You've caught yourself mid-scroll, late at night, seeking yet another video about healing, growth, transformation, another promise that this time, finally, you'll break free. But here's the uncomfortable truth we rarely say out loud. Part of you doesn't want to heal. Part of you has become so intimate with your pain that letting it go would feel like losing yourself. You've built entire structures of meaning around your wounds, entire identities around what was done to you, entire relationships around being the one who suffers. And that part of you, the part Jung called the shadow, will fight like hell to keep things exactly as they are. This isn't about blame. This isn't about adding shame to suffering. This is about something far more interesting and far more dangerous. The unconscious mechanisms by which we trap ourselves in the very pain we claim to want to escape. Jung spent decades observing a peculiar pattern in his clinical practice. His patients would arrive desperate for change, yet would unconsciously sabotage every pathway toward healing he helped them uncover. They weren't lying about wanting to get better. They genuinely suffered. But beneath the surface of conscious desire lived a deeper architecture of resistance, a psychological immune system designed to keep the familiar, painful present intact. Before this video ends, you'll understand the 10 specific behaviors that Jung identified as the invisible chains we forge ourselves, the dark patterns that masquerade as protection but function as prisons. More importantly, you'll learn to recognize these patterns operating in your own psyche, right now, in this moment. Because awareness is where transformation begins. Welcome to Deep Psyche Lab, where we explore the hidden dimensions of the human psyche through the lens of Carl Jung's depth psychology. If you're new here, this channel is dedicated to making the profound insights of analytical psychology accessible and personally relevant. We don't offer quick fixes or surface-level positivity. We go deep. If that resonates, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our weekly explorations into the unconscious mind. Now, let's descend into the underworld of self-sabotage. Let's look at what really keeps us stuck. The first thing Jung understood, which most modern psychology still struggles to accept, is that the psyche is not interested in your happiness. The psyche is interested in wholeness, and wholeness includes everything you've spent your life trying to exclude. The rage you've buried, the desires you've denied, the parts of yourself you've exiled to maintain an acceptable image. When you refuse these elements, when you build your identity around being only the good, only the light, only the healed, the rejected material doesn't disappear. It goes underground. It becomes the shadow. And from that dark soil, it begins to sabotage you in ways you cannot see. Think about the last time you were about to make a significant positive change in your life. Maybe you were ready to leave a toxic relationship. Maybe you'd finally committed to a creative project that mattered. Maybe you decided to set real boundaries at work. Do you remember what happened in the days leading up to that change? If you're honest, you'll recall a sudden surge of doubt, a voice that said, "Who are you to want more? Who are you to think you deserve better?" You'll remember finding reasons to delay, to wait for the perfect moment, to gather just one more piece of information before acting. This isn't weakness. This is the shadow doing its job, protecting the status quo, keeping you in the known territory of pain because the unknown territory of transformation feels more threatening than suffering. Jung called this the repetition compulsion, though he inherited the term from Freud and deepened it considerably. In his work with patients, he noticed people returning again and again to the same painful situations, the same destructive relationships, the same self-defeating choices. A woman who'd grown up with an alcoholic father would marry 3 alcoholic men in succession. A man humiliated by an authoritarian parent would seek out authoritarian bosses. They weren't consciously choosing pain. They were unconsciously seeking the familiar, attempting to master an old wound by recreating its conditions, hoping this time the outcome would be different. But here's what makes this so insidious. The repetition feels like fate, like external bad luck, like the universe conspiring against you. You don't see your own hand in the pattern because the hand belongs to the unconscious. You genuinely believe these things are happening to you, not through you. And that belief, that innocent victimhood, is itself one of the behaviors that keeps you trapped. The victim archetype is real. It exists in the collective unconscious as one of the fundamental patterns through which human beings organize experience. When genuine trauma occurs, when real violation happens, the victim position is accurate, necessary, and demands witnessing. But Jung observed something crucial in his practice. Some people continue to identify as victims long after the violation has ended. The original wound becomes an organizing principle, a lens through which all subsequent experience is filtered. Every disappointment becomes proof of persecution. Every boundary someone else sets becomes abandonment. Every challenge becomes evidence that the world is fundamentally against you. This identification serves a dark function. It protects you from responsibility. It protects you from the terrifying freedom of authorship over your life. If you're purely a victim, if everything painful is being done to you by forces beyond your control, then you can't be blamed for your circumstances. You can't be expected to change. You can't be held accountable for the ways you might be perpetuating your own suffering. The victim identity is an ironclad alibi against the soul's demand for growth. Jung writes in his autobiography, Memories, Dreams, Reflections, about a turning point in his own development. He realized he had been blaming his father, blaming his mother, blaming his circumstances for the neurotic patterns that plagued his early adulthood. Then one day he had a simple, devastating thought. What if I am the author of all this? The question changed everything, not because it made him responsible for what had been done to him as a child, but because it made him responsible for what he did with those experiences now. It shifted him from object to subject, from effect to cause, from victim to creator. But that shift requires something most of us resist with every fiber of our being. We have to integrate the shadow. We have to acknowledge that we are not only the sufferer, but sometimes the inflictor of suffering. We are not only the abandoned, but sometimes the abandoner. We are not only the betrayed, but capable of betrayal. This is what Jung meant when he said that psychological development requires becoming conscious of one's capacity for evil. Not committing evil acts, but recognizing that the capacity exists within you, that you are a full human being containing light and darkness in equal measure. The refusal to see this keeps you trapped, because it splits the world into simplistic categories: good people and bad people, victims and perpetrators, the enlightened and the ignorant. As long as you can maintain that split, as long as you can project all darkness onto others and claim all light for yourself, you remain unconscious. You remain a child, and you remain in pain, because the split is an internal wound that bleeds out into every relationship, every endeavor, every moment of your life. Let me give you a specific example. A man comes to therapy complaining that every woman he dates turns out to be controlling and manipulative. He presents himself as open, vulnerable, authentic, the victim of these terrible women who seem attracted to his goodness and then destroy it. His therapist listens for weeks, noting a pattern. The man never mentions his own behavior. He never explores what he might be contributing to these dynamics. When the therapist gently suggests they examine his role in these relationships, the man becomes furious. I came here for support, not to be attacked. He leaves therapy, confirms his belief that no one understands him, and finds another woman to begin the same cycle with. What's happening here? The man's shadow contains all his own controlling, manipulative impulses he's rejected as incompatible with his self-image as the good, spiritual, evolved partner. Because he won't acknowledge these impulses in himself, he projects them onto his partners. He literally cannot see his own behavior. He doesn't notice how he manipulates through vulnerability, how he controls through emotional withdrawal, how he uses his openness as a weapon. The refusal to integrate these aspects of himself guarantees he will keep attracting partners who will mirror back what he won't own. And he will keep suffering, righteously convinced of his innocence. This brings us to another dark behavior Jung warned about: spiritual bypassing. Though the term was coined later by John Wellwood, Jung identified the phenomenon throughout his work. He noticed patients who used religious concepts, mystical experiences, and spiritual practices not to deepen their self-awareness but to avoid it. They would speak in elevated language about love and consciousness while remaining utterly unconscious of their petty cruelties, their passive aggression, their subtle manipulations. They had learned to use spirituality as an escape hatch from the difficult work of being human. You see this everywhere in contemporary culture. People meditating to avoid feeling their anger. People talking about the universe's plan to avoid taking responsibility for their choices. people proclaiming their commitment to authenticity while remaining utterly inauthentic about their shadow. Jung was scathing about this tendency. In his view, genuine spirituality required descending into the darkness, not transcending it. It required confronting what he called the inferior function, the least developed aspect of your personality that you've spent your life avoiding. It required entering the cave where your dragon lives, not pretending you've evolved beyond needing to make that journey. The spiritual bypass keeps you trapped because it provides a noble-sounding excuse for remaining unconscious. It lets you believe you're doing the work when you're actually avoiding it. It surrounds your pain with incense and mantras and affirmations while the wound continues to fester underneath. Real transformation, Jung insisted, requires getting your hands dirty. It requires facing the ugly, primitive, embarrassing aspects of yourself that no amount of meditation or positive thinking can eliminate. Another behavior that traps us, and this one is particularly painful to acknowledge, is our attachment to suffering as identity. Jung observed that people don't just have problems, they become their problems. The anxiety isn't something you experience, it's who you are. The depression isn't a state you're in, it's your defining characteristic. Over time, your entire personality structure organizes around the wound. You become the anxious one in your family, the depressed friend in your social circle, the one who's been through so much in every new relationship. This attachment serves multiple functions. It gives you a clear identity in a confusing world. It provides a community, other people who suffer in similar ways. It offers a built-in explanation for why you can't do certain things, take certain risks, make certain changes. And most insidiously, it becomes a way of receiving care and attention. Jung noticed that some of his patients had never received as much focused concern as they did when they were suffering. Their pain was the only thing that made people pay attention. To let go of the pain would mean letting go of the only reliable source of connection they had. There's an old fairy tale Jung sometimes referenced, the story of a princess who had a golden ball that represented her joy, her vitality, her authentic self. She loses it down a well, and a frog promises to retrieve it if she'll let him live with her. She agrees, desperate to have her golden ball back. But when the frog actually brings the ball to her door, she's horrified. She doesn't want this ugly creature in her palace. She wants her joy back. But she doesn't want to pay the price, which is accepting and integrating the ugly, rejected parts of herself that the frog represents. So she slams the door. The frog persists. Finally, in disgust, she throws him against the wall, and the moment she makes contact with what she's rejected, he transforms into a prince and she becomes whole. The tale illustrates something Jung returned to again and again. Transformation requires engagement with what disgusts you, what scares you, what you've refused. But most of us slam the door. We want the golden ball, the joy, the vitality, the freedom from pain without touching the frog. We want to heal without changing. We want transformation without transformation. And so we remain stuck, clutching our suffering, unable to see that the very thing we're holding on to is what prevents our liberation. Let's talk about resentment, because this might be the darkest trap of all. In Jung's understanding, resentment is not merely an emotion, but a complete orientation toward life. It's a way of organizing your psychic energy around what was done to you, what you didn't receive, what you deserved but never got. Resentment takes your vital force, the libido Jung saw as the fundamental creative energy of the psyche, and turns it backward, into the past, into endless rehearsals of old grievances. The person trapped in resentment spends their life prosecuting the case against those who wronged them. They collect evidence. They refine their arguments. They imagine the moment of vindication when everyone will finally see how much they've suffered and how unjust it all was. This activity feels righteous. It feels like bearing witness, like refusing to let the guilty off the hook. But Jung would ask, who is actually imprisoned here? The person you resent has moved on with their life. They're not thinking about you. They're not losing sleep. You are the one chained to them through your resentment, giving them power over your present moment, allowing them to continue hurting you long after the original injury has passed. There's a Buddhist parable about this that Jung would have appreciated. Holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. But the Jungian dimension adds another layer. Your resentment is also a refusal to see the complexity of the person who hurt you. It keeps them frozen as a villain, a two-dimensional figure in the drama of your suffering. As long as you can maintain that simplification, You don't have to confront the uncomfortable truth that the person who hurt you was also suffering, was also unconscious, was also trapped in their own unexamined patterns. You don't have to extend to them the same compassion you demand for yourself. And more than that, you don't have to ask what your resentment is protecting you from. Because here's the dark secret Jung uncovered. Resentment often shields you from grief. If you can stay angry, you don't have to feel the bottomless sadness of what you lost, what you'll never have, what can never be recovered. Grief requires surrender. It requires accepting that the past is finished, that certain wounds will never be healed in the way you want, that you must somehow build a meaningful life from this broken foundation. Resentment offers an alternative. Stay in battle, stay vigilant, never surrender, never accept. It keeps you feeling powerful when the alternative is feeling devastated. If this is resonating with you, if you're recognizing some of these patterns in yourself, take a moment to like this video. It helps us reach more people who are ready for this kind of honest psychological work. And it tells me you want more explorations like this one. Now, another behavior that keeps people trapped, one that's harder to recognize because it often looks like strength, is what Jung would identify as an inflated ego defending against the unconscious. You know this person. Maybe you are this person. They have it all figured out. They've read the books, done the workshops, mastered the techniques. They can explain in sophisticated language exactly what's wrong with everyone else. They have strong opinions about the right way to live, the right way to heal, the right way to grow. They're always teaching, always advising, always positioning themselves as slightly more evolved than whoever they're speaking to. Jung encountered this constantly, especially among people drawn to his work. They would learn about archetypes and individuation and active imagination, and suddenly they'd become experts, analysts of everyone else's unconscious, while remaining utterly blind to their own. This inflation, Jung explained, happens when the ego identifies with archetypal content from the collective unconscious. Instead of recognizing these powerful forces as something other than themselves, something larger that moves through them, they claim ownership. They become the wise one, the healer, the prophet. And in that inflation, they lose touch with their actual humanity, the petty, fearful, needy parts of themselves that still operate below the surface. This inflation keeps you trapped because it prevents genuine encounter with others and with yourself. You can't learn anything new because you already know everything. You can't be challenged because you're too busy challenging everyone else. You can't grow because you've already arrived. Meanwhile, the unconscious material you're so busy projecting onto others continues to rule you from the shadows. Your blind spots grow larger in direct proportion to your confidence that you have none. Jung experienced this himself in his own confrontation with the unconscious, documented in the Red Book. There were moments when he felt possessed by archetypal knowledge, when he believed he had access to cosmic truths beyond ordinary human understanding. But a crucial part of his development was recognizing when he was inflated, when his ego had claimed too much territory. He developed what he called active imagination, partly as a method for dialoguing with these forces instead of identifying with them. He would ask the archetypal figures who appeared in his visions, "Who are you? What do you want?" Instead of assuming he was these figures, he treated them as other, as guides and teachers and adversaries whose wisdom exceeded his conscious understanding. The antidote to inflation is humility, but not the false humility that's just inverted grandiosity. Real humility, in Jung's sense, comes from recognizing that you are not the center of the psyche. The ego is a small candle in a vast darkness, and most of what determines your behavior operates beyond your awareness. This recognition doesn't diminish you. It actually frees you. You stop having to pretend you're in control. You can admit confusion, uncertainty, ignorance. You can say, "I don't know," and mean it. And from that place of genuine not knowing, real learning becomes possible. There's another dark behavior we need to examine: the refusal to sacrifice. Jung understood the psyche as a dynamic system constantly seeking balance, constantly compensating for one-sidedness. When you pour all your energy into one aspect of life, career, relationship, caretaking, self-improvement, something else is being neglected. Eventually, the neglected element demands attention. You get sick, a relationship breaks. You feel a gnawing emptiness despite your external success. These are not random misfortunes. They're the psyche's attempt to restore equilibrium, to force you to attend to what you've excluded. But here's the trap. Most people respond to these crises by doubling down. The career-focused person works harder. The relationship-focused person clings tighter. The self-improvement addict adds another morning routine, another optimization strategy. They refuse the sacrifice the psyche is demanding, the sacrifice of the one-sided attitude that's causing the imbalance. Jung saw this refusal as a failure of what he called the transcendent function, the psyche's capacity to hold tension between opposites until a third thing emerges, a new attitude that includes and transcends both sides. The refusal to sacrifice keeps you trapped in a closed loop. You keep trying to solve your problems using the same consciousness that created them. You want relief from your anxiety, but won't sacrifice the perfectionism that generates it. You want deep connection, but won't sacrifice the defenses that keep intimacy at bay. You want creative fulfillment, but won't sacrifice the need for certainty and approval. Jung would say that genuine transformation always requires a death, not a physical death, but a psychological one. Something in you has to die for something new to be born. And most people would rather suffer indefinitely than allow that death to occur. This connects to what might be the most fundamental dark behavior of all, the fear of individuation itself. Individuation is Jung's term for the process of becoming who you actually are, distinct from the collective expectations, the family scripts, the cultural conditioning that has shaped you. It's the journey toward wholeness, toward integrating all the parts of yourself you've disowned or never developed. It sounds beautiful. Everyone claims to want it, but Jung observed that when people actually approach the threshold of individuation, when they're actually on the verge of stepping into their authentic self, something in them recoils in terror. Why? Because individuation is not self-actualization. It's not becoming the best version of yourself according to some external standard. It's often dark, weird, uncomfortable. It might require you to admit desires that don't fit your image. It might require you to develop capacities that feel foreign. It might require you to disappoint people, to stand alone, to give up being liked or understood. Jung himself faced this when he broke with Freud. He had to choose between maintaining his position in the psychoanalytic movement, the approval, the belonging, the shared mission, or following his own vision of the psyche even though it meant isolation, criticism, ridicule. He chose individuation, and it nearly destroyed him. For years he wandered in what he called his confrontation with the unconscious, uncertain whether he was pioneering new psychological territory or simply going mad. Most people will not make that choice. They'll stay in the collective, stay in the known identity, stay trapped in familiar pain because the alternative, standing alone with no guarantee of where the path leads, feels more terrifying than suffering. The fear of individuation keeps you trapped by making you believe that your current limitations are your actual boundaries, that the small life you've constructed is the only life available to you. There's a story Jung tells about a rainmaker brought to a drought-stricken village. The rainmaker arrives, requests a small cottage on the outskirts of the village, and disappears inside for 3 days. On the third day, rain falls. The villagers are amazed. They ask, "What did you do?" "What ritual? What prayer?" The rainmaker replies, "I did nothing. But when I arrived in your village, I could feel I was out of Tao, out of the natural order. So I sat in the cottage until I found my way back into Tao. Once I was in order, the rain came naturally." Jung used this story to illustrate a crucial point. Your work is not to force change, but to remove the obstacles to your natural unfolding. The behaviors we've been examining, the victim identification, the inflation, the resentment, the refusal to sacrifice, the fear of individuation, these are the obstacles. They're not who you are. They're the defensive structures you've built to protect yourself from encountering who you are. And they keep you trapped precisely because you've mistaken them for your identity. So how do you begin to recognize these patterns in yourself? Not through self-judgment, Jung would insist. Not through harsh scrutiny or endless self-analysis. You begin through what he called paying attention to the symptoms, the slips of the tongue, the recurring dreams, the seemingly random accidents and coincidences that aren't random at all. Your psyche is constantly trying to communicate with you, constantly showing you through images and synchronicities where you're stuck, what needs attention, which behaviors are trapping you. Start by asking yourself, where in my life do I keep returning to the same painful situation, despite my conscious desire for something different? What am I complaining about most frequently? Who am I blaming? What opportunities have I refused recently, and what was my justification? Where do I feel superior to others? More enlightened, more aware? What would I have to give up to change? What part of my suffering has become comfortable, familiar, even precious to me? These questions aren't meant to be answered quickly or easily. They're meant to be lived with, to be asked again and again as you watch yourself move through your days. The answers will come not as intellectual insights, but as moments of uncomfortable recognition. Oh, I'm doing it again. I just blamed my partner for a dynamic I'm creating. I just turned down an opportunity because I'm attached to my story about being held back. I just used my spiritual practice to avoid a difficult conversation. Jung developed several methods for working with this material, but the one most accessible for self-exploration is what he called active imagination. It's a practice of dialoguing with the unconscious material as if it were other than you, as if it had its own intelligence and perspective. When you notice one of these dark behaviors operating, let's say you catch yourself in a resentment spiral, you can stop, sit quietly, and ask, "What are you trying to protect me from?" Then you wait. You allow images, words, memories to arise without censoring them. You might see yourself as a child being hurt. You might hear a voice saying, "If you forgive them, it means what they did was okay." You might feel the grief underneath the anger. The point isn't to get rid of the resentment. It's to bring it into relationship, to understand what it's protecting, what function it's serving. When you do this, something shifts. The behavior doesn't necessarily disappear, but it loses its compulsive quality. You see it operating, and in that seeing you have a choice. You can still choose resentment, but now it's a conscious choice rather than an unconscious compulsion. And more often, once you understand what the behavior is protecting, you can find healthier ways to meet that need. This is the work of integration that Jung spent his life exploring, not eliminating the darkness but incorporating it, learning from it, allowing it to transform through conscious attention. The shadow doesn't go away. The dark behaviors don't vanish, but they stop ruling you from the unconscious. They become visible, and anything that becomes visible can be worked with. The ultimate insight here is that pain itself is not the enemy. Suffering is not the problem. Jung distinguished between necessary suffering and neurotic suffering. Necessary suffering is the pain that comes from being alive, from loss and limitation and mortality. Neurotic suffering is the pain we generate by refusing to engage with necessary suffering, by constructing elaborate defenses and avoidances that paradoxically magnify the original pain. The dark behaviors we've explored are all forms of neurotic suffering, attempts to avoid unavoidable pain that only succeed in trapping us in endless cycles of self-generated misery. When you stop fighting necessary suffering, when you stop trying to transcend or eliminate or spiritually bypass the basic painful conditions of human existence, something remarkable happens. The pain doesn't increase, it often decreases, because you're no longer adding the second layer of suffering that comes from resistance. You're no longer expending enormous amounts of psychic energy maintaining defenses that don't actually work. You become paradoxically more joyful by accepting sorrow, more alive by accepting death, more free by accepting limitation. Jung's vision of the individuated person is not someone who has eliminated their darkness, who has transcended suffering, who has become enlightened in some conventional sense. It's someone who has made peace with their own contradictions, who can hold light and dark together without splitting, who has descended into their personal underworld and integrated what they found there. This person still suffers, still struggles, still fails. But they don't add the extra layer of neurotic misery that comes from believing they shouldn't be suffering, shouldn't be struggling, shouldn't be failing. There's a freedom in that acceptance that exceeds any happiness promised by the self-help industry. It's the freedom to be fully human, fully yourself, with all the messy complexity that entails. And from that ground of acceptance, real change becomes possible, not the change that's imposed from the outside, not the change that demands you become something you're not, but the organic unfolding of your actual nature once the obstacles have been removed. That's the work. Not to fix yourself, not to eliminate your darkness, not to become perfect or enlightened or finally good enough. The work is to become conscious, to see clearly what's operating in you, and to choose, moment by moment, whether to remain trapped in the old patterns or to step towards something new. The traps are real, the behaviors are powerful, but they're not inescapable. The door has always been unlocked. You just have to be willing to see that your hand is the one holding it closed. This channel explores psychology for self-understanding and is not a substitute for professional therapy. If you found this exploration valuable, if it challenged you or opened new ways of seeing yourself, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Deep Psyche Lab. We release new depth psychology content every week, each one a journey into a different aspect of the unconscious. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss when we descend into the next layer of the psyche together. And in the comments, I'd like you to share one word, just one word, that captures which of these dark behaviors you recognized most strongly in yourself. Don't explain it, don't elaborate, just name it. Resentment, inflation, victim, bypass. Let's build a collective map of where we're each trapped so we can find our way toward freedom together. Thank you for doing this difficult work. Thank you for having the courage to look at what most people spend their lives avoiding. Until next time, keep descending.